Welcome to the Athlete Insights Podcast, hosted by Yash Pad Day, a podcast focused on letting athletes tell their journeys in their sport. This podcast is presented by Boxed Water. Boxed water is better.
Welcome into another episode of the Athlete Insights Podcast. Today I've got my guest, Collin Murray. He's the pitching coach, the newest pitching coach for Siena College. Collin, again, I know you guys have been grinding. You guys have had practice and you guys have been busy. So I appreciate you taking the time and chatting with me today and sharing your story for sure.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned you watched some of my stuff previously, and you kind of know I like to start from the beginning and kind of understand where you came from and now to where you are today. And so, can you talk to me about your early experience in sport? Kind of how what is your earliest memory? Excuse me, in sport?
Yeah, my earliest memory, I think, is probably growing up going to Red Sox games.
Mhm.
I grew up like 20, 25 minutes outside of Boston, which is probably what everybody from Boston says, or outside of Boston says. But grew up, I actually did not like the Red Sox growing up at all. Loved the Yankees,
Oh.
and now I don't as much after being in pro ball and having to play them a bunch. But yeah, I just kind of gravitated to baseball right away through going to games, and they were good at the time, so it helped a little bit of kind of that culture of baseball in Boston.
And that was going to be kind of my question there. Is it was baseball your first love? Did you play any other sports? And then kind of how did you find and what led you to kind of pursue baseball in your youth career?
Yeah, I grew up playing baseball, football, wrestled. Think that was it primarily, but
Yeah.
baseball was always my first love. It was just the thing I gravitated towards the most. I think my family was always like pretty big into baseball. No, nobody really played organized before me, but everybody was big into it. My sister's 2 years older than me. She was really into it. So it's just something I had around me all the time growing up. And neighbors that I have, I grew up on a street of like 8 houses with 5 kids the same age as me, and we'd all grow up on the same travel team and doing stuff like that. So, it was just always something I was doing all the time, and it just became second nature for me.
And what's for you in your? I know you mentioned off camera, and we'll talk a little bit about your unique baseball journey here in a second. But what's kind of a core memory, something that stands out to you in your youth career that really pushed you forward?
I think that's a good question. I think maybe the biggest memory, the earliest one I should say, probably actually happened in football. It
Mhm.
was scoring a touchdown. I didn't have a good year the year before. I was fifth
Yep.
grade, and I don't think I played much for third, fourth, fifth. I wasn't one of the best kids on the team. And then when I was in sixth grade, I think I had the opportunity to start playing a lot and being a receiver. And that's when we started passing. And
Mhm.
I remember scoring, and it just kind of like changed the way that I wanted to go and compete. Instead of things just being, you know, I think more passive for me at first, it kind of switched to gear me where I was like, oh, I want to go after the things that I like. And then I just took that to the baseball diamond and just pitching growing up all the time. Like so many outings, I just remember whether it was good or bad, it was always the most fun thing that I did, and just trying to take something from each one of them and get better. And I kind of grew my love for pitching that way a lot as well.
Gotcha. And I know, like you said off camera, you mentioned your high school journey. Can you briefly describe kind of the uniqueness of your baseball journey throughout high school and beyond?
Yeah, it's a lot more memorable than some of the youth stuff because I didn't play. I don't have any high school memories from it.
Yeah.
I went out all 4 years for my high school team. I went to a private high school in Massachusetts
Uh-huh.
for me for baseball, and
Gotcha.
then for one reason or another, I didn't make any team, including like the freshman team, the freshman B team,
Mhm.
but never stopped. I kept working. Every time that I'd get cut, I'd go back into the facility near my house literally that night or the next day and just start training again for, the next year and just getting better. And after a couple of years, I got a lot better and gained a lot more velocity. And I was a lefty, and
Mhm.
I thought I knew how to get guys out regardless of what it was before. And so coming out with better stuff, I got looked at from a couple schools, and then McGill University ended up being the place that I chose. So it was a weird path through high school of not playing organized ball at all. I played
Mhm.
travel ball, but nothing, with the school. But
Mhm.
honestly, I think it is what made me drive and, do this for a living. I don't think that I would be in baseball right now,
Mhm.
honestly, if I played high school baseball for 4 years. I don't know that, but I'm sure I would have enjoyed my time. And then moved on to the next thing. But it kind of lit a fire in me a little bit where it was like,
Mhm.
I was 14 years old. You're not going to tell me at 14 what I can and can't do. I remember my
Yep.
coach told me I should try another sport when I was 14. So it was like that part lit us fire. And it was like, you're not going to let me do that. I'm going to keep going until I get it,
Mhm.
or, until I can't do it anymore. But
Yeah.
I'm happy with the way it turned out, but it was definitely, yeah, interesting to say the least.
And what are, now that you've, and we'll kind of touch on, before we touch on kind of your transition into the coaching side of things, what's some lessons that you took away from your playing career in your playing days that you try to instill in the athletes that you coach now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing's probably, as cliche, like believing in yourself and being assertive, like
Mhm.
especially with guys on the mound. I think if I could do my career over again, I would pitch a lot differently.
Mhm.
Not that I did bad statistically or anything, but I would have attacked a lot more and trusted my stuff a lot more and thrown inside and set up all the other things I need to do on the mound.
Gotcha.
And I think a lot of people are sometimes hesitant to do that or to throw inside or to not want to hit a guy. Not that that's our intention, but they get kind of timid on that and they start erring on the side of throwing it away. And it kills really any chance that you have for real success because you're not setting anything up and everybody's comfortable in the box and you're either getting balls or strikes that they're ripping and they're hitting it pretty good. So I
Mhm.
think that was the biggest thing, and just taking that with all the athletes I've been around is like, be you, build relationships with them, understand what they need and how they can really resonate with the things you're talking about. But at the end of the day, believe in yourself and be aggressive with what you got.
And that's great advice. Right? Just believing and think, if you don't believe in yourself, no one else is going to believe in you. And that's kind of that mantra. And that's a great mantra to have in that. And that kind of leads into, I wanted to discuss your coaching philosophy and the evolution of that throughout your years. But I know you have experience coaching at the MLB level with the Orioles, with most recently with the Detroit Tigers. Can you talk about those experiences and how those have shaped you, and off of that, how your coaching philosophy has evolved as you've gotten these experiences?
Yeah, yeah, I was super lucky to be part of both of those organizations. I think, with Baltimore, with what they're doing now that everybody can see at the big league level and kind of the success they're having with a lot of homegrown guys, I
Yeah.
learned a lot about how to develop players and how to build relationships with players and how to be there for them when they need help, whether it's for a physical thing or for a mental thing or whatever it is, and understanding how they work. So that was huge. And then the Orioles are obviously really big into like data and the analytics and progressing the game. They're kind of, I think, one of the faces of the new wave of baseball, and they do a really good job with it. So I was around a lot of really good people that I could kind of build ideas off of. And I'm somebody that, like I said, I run a business, athlete lab, and I really teach people how to work in sports. And one of the biggest things that I learned was how important coding and visualization was to really relay a message with how data is such a big part of sports now, but if you can't communicate it, it doesn't mean anything. And I think some of those skills that I learned were, at the Orioles and due to a lot of the people around me that I was able to build off of and really pick their brains on and learn from. And then
Mhm.
Detroit too. I was there in 21 and then I
Mhm.
left for the Orioles. And when I came back in 24 this year, it was, in my opinion, like completely different. Like a lot of the leadership had changed and a lot of the pitching guys had come over from the Dodgers and
Mhm.
um, they were awesome to be around. Like guys who had been there, been proven winners, and have World Series rings, and to learn from them and to be around. The staff, the players, the upper level management, they were all really supportive, really helpful, and I think they're ushering a whole new wave of what baseball is in Detroit. And I think there's a lot of really good guys coming up, pitchers, hitters. I was lucky enough to be around a lot of them as well, and they got a lot of good things coming for them. So just really the way that I saw how the organizations treated people, treated players, and then we're able to communicate with them. Like all of this stuff is huge in baseball of, okay, how do we help guys, player development, all these tools, all these different techniques, all
Yeah.
this data, but it doesn't mean anything if you can't get through to them. And I think
Yeah.
both orgs care about not only what can we do, but how can we do it to help you.
Yeah, no, and it's great to hear you also say, like, when you got back to Detroit, how you were able to learn both in both organizations, like learn the data analysis side of things, but also learn from the pitching coaches that do have, and the coaches on the staff that do have World Series rings, because I'm kind of that growth mindset of I like to be around people that I can learn from and that I can get better off of. And it's great to hear you say that in that role, in those roles that you've been in, and kind of been able to grow from. And so as a pitching coach though, Collin, when you're developing pitchers, when you're talking to pitchers, what's one aspect that you're looking at, and what do you look for kind of when you focus on their growth as pitchers?
Yeah, I think there's certain categories of boxes that you need to check off no matter who you are. You need to be able to have command. You need to be able to attack the strike zone. You need to be able to hold runners, and you need to be able to perform with, with or without your best stuff, but we want to develop as good of stuff as we can. And
Yeah.
I think it probably goes in the order of, command and getting ahead and attacking rather.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be command in terms of just throwing strikes down the middle the whole time. That's not what I mean. But being able to really hone in on where you're going with that pitch and the execution of what that is. And, that's something I'm really excited for with Siena is they seem to have a lot of really good arms, and like I'm just getting there now, but everything I've
Yeah.
seen, every conversation I've had, I'm super amped to be around those guys because there's a lot of talent there. And so just honing in execution and doing the things you need to do. Same thing with what it was at Pro Ball is
Yeah.
just they really develop the pitcher, not just the thrower.
Gotcha.
I think everything's important. Velo super important. Pitch movement super important as well. But it all starts with attacking with your best stuff.
For sure, for sure. And you talk about having big arms and the physicality of it, but how much? And I know I talk to athletes all the time about the mental game and the mental side of things. How much of pitching would you say is mental versus what percentage of it would you say is physical? Or can you talk on both sides of that?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to say in terms of a percentage split. I know everybody says like it's 50% mental or 90% mental,
Yeah,
and a lot of times it is. And I
yeah,
think it's dependent on each guy and what they need and what
yeah.
level you're at. But that being said, like they go hand in hand, and you have to have both of them. Guys who have the mental but don't have the physical around them, they're going to reach some sort of ceiling where, they're going to face competition that's going to continue to get the best of them, or they're not going to be able to continue to push past that
Yeah.
until they develop the physical. And then the same thing for those others. It's like I've seen plenty of guys that throw 100 miles an hour that don't make it out of rookie ball or don't make it out of low A, and they're some of the most talented arms I've ever seen in my life. And it's so cool watching them throw every day up close. But at the same time, if you can't figure it out, especially in pro ball, it's like the window of being able to play and, given the opportunity to throw, it's not that long. By the
Yeah.
time you're signed or drafted to, the next wave comes in the next year, and every year they got to make roster cuts. They got to do these other things. So
Yeah.
trying to have both, together, like I wish I could give you an answer. I'm going to say 100% mental and
Yeah.
100% physical.
Uh-huh. No, and you're like, it is like, like, especially like when you get down the stretch in innings, right? It is, like you said, it is that you have to have both. You have to have them both go hand in hand for it to work and for it to actually be able to execute, each pitch effectively. You got to be able to do both on the sides of the ball. And you were at the pro ball level for quite a few years. Now you're back in the college fold, and obviously the collegiate environment has changed so much with NIL, transfer portal and stuff like that. But focusing on NIL as a coach, what is your approach, or what will be now that you're at Siena? I know you've only been there for a short time, but what kind of would be your approach to help your pitchers and your athletes balance kind of NIL along with in the collegiate fold?
Yeah. I think with the conference that we're in, I don't think that's something that we really have to deal with in the MAC, which I
Gotcha.
think makes it easier for me, somebody
Yeah.
coming from pro ball where everything is what's going on in the game versus now it's all the recruiting and all the other
Yeah.
stuff as well.
Yeah.
But I love that stuff too. Like it's
Yeah.
really fun getting to talk to different pitchers and different guys and just hearing them out. Like I'm never gonna try to force somebody to come to my program, right? I want people and I'll let them know that I want them and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I've gotten to be around so many good pitchers, guys who are MLB All-Stars all the way through rookie ball guys, all the way through college, high school, and just
Yeah.
seeing how many arms there are out there and like maybe the things that I could do to help these guys or dive into them and who they are as people and how I could resonate with them. If you can't tell, sometimes I don't shut up. Like I like talking. So
Uh,
being able to do that kind of stuff, I love it. And
yeah.
I think we have a really good group of guys that want to do the same thing and build those relationships at Siena as well.
And that's what it's all about, coach. It's all about, building relationships, whether it's at the pro level, whether it's at, and I tell, my students all the time, my student athletes that are in my classes that I teach too, is it's all about, how you present yourself, the kind of relationship you have with your teammates, with your coaches, is crucial to the success of your team and your overall success as on a personal level. So yeah, relationships are definitely
For
I
everything.
agree with you there. Relationships are everything in sport, and that's really kind of how you can move forward in that realm. And so before we wrap up the podcast, I always give my guests a chance to, like I said, off camera, the whole goal of my podcast was to help inspire youth and the young kids that I coached to really push themselves the
Yeah.
best that they could be. And so I always allow my guests to provide advice to youth players. So as a coach, as a pitching coach, looking back on your career, looking back to where you are, kind of reflecting on your goals and your future now at Siena, I always present the scenario: if you're sitting in a room with youth baseball players, a young guys like you once were, what's one piece of advice or a skill set that you would talk to them about to hone in on, or a piece of advice that you'd give them?
Yeah, I think there's probably 40,000 things that I could say in it, and
Mhm.
I think it all stems from believing in yourself, like we talked about earlier, is the
Yeah.
biggest thing. But even within that, it's like just work hard, be attentive, especially when you're at the younger levels like that. You
Mhm.
might not be the most physically developed person yet. You might be 6'5", but you don't know how to, really use your body yet and
Yeah.
work with it the way you need to. And
Mhm.
sometimes these just take time. Like it's not always the quickest fix. For me, it took 4 years, 3.5 years until I got good enough to play in college. And
Mhm.
luckily for me, like I kept working. I worked every day.
Yeah.
And some guys get it way quicker.
Yeah.
Maybe it took me way longer to do it, but at the end of the day, like you can do it if you put your all into it and don't give up. Like you might not see the results right away. So just knowing that and just continuing to chip away, work hard, and keep that goal in mind. Like whatever it is, if you keep the goal in mind and you go for it and you
Mhm.
don't let other stuff stop you, you can just use them as learning lessons and it helps you out way more. You go way faster than you thought you could before.
Yeah, and it's great to hear you say that in terms of failure isn't really failure. It's more of a stepping stone to the success that you're going to achieve in the future. And it's great to kind of hear that from your side of things. And really, it's been great to kind of understand throughout this whole episode, kind of understand your career and kind of how you've progressed. It's been great to see that progress. And like I said, I'm happy for you where you're at Siena, and the experiences that you've gotten. Again, I wish you the best of luck this season and moving forward. Like I said, I'll keep tabs on Siena baseball this season and moving forward. So again, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Athlete Insights podcast. Again, Collin, appreciate you coming on and spending time with me, reflecting on your career and then your future with Siena. And like I said, I'm rooting for you guys. Like I said, I'm excited for you as you begin your new journey. And I'll have Collin's social media handles on the video, so you can follow Collin and his journey at Siena and moving forward on his social media. And then you can also follow my podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, pretty much wherever you get a podcast, you'll find this one. So again, Collin, I appreciate you coming on and spending time with me, but we'll see you next time.